Welcome to Flow at the Source podcast, conversations for sustainable process improvement.
Welcome to Flow at the Source, episode number 2. And I'm truly excited to have you here, Jay. Thanks for making the time for us. I've known you by now, if you don't know, for close to a decade.
That seems about right, yeah.
About right.
Yeah.
So 5 years we worked together. Initially, you were one of the key stakeholders for me. You were my client. And then eventually you became my people leader.
Yeah.
And when you became my people leader, the one change I noticed is you were close and helpful before, and you became closer and more helpful as a leader. So it's a little interesting. I love that how you had a vested interest in my success. That's what I felt. And then the one thing that I've noticed, because people observe people, whether we're trying to be nosy or not, is how you kept to yourself, kept quiet in a highly visible environment where you were a very highly visible leader. So that's interesting to see that. So before I go on and say a little more, just welcome and thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And look, and I appreciate those observations, Tomas. And for you and I to still stay connected after all of these years as we're doing different things, I'm just like really excited here to have this conversation. And, you know, for you and what you're getting done here in this space of we're like never done with the work we do. Right.
Thank you. And the one thing I want to say for the listeners is that so Jay comes in with nearly 4 decades, if not 4 decades of experience. So straight out of college, I don't think even finished college, and you were already working for our employer. And you had a very unique combination of commercial leadership. Lean Six Sigma, hardcore, because it's all the way to master black belt. With more than one tour of duty. And then almost the second half of your careers as a people leader, not people development, like helping the organization translate a lot of the things that we needed to do from operationally, but also leadership traits, culture. Like a lot of places talk integrity. I believe that we lived integrity, and I thank you for a lot of the work that you did and the people that you brought on to help us along the way. So with that, the other thing that is interesting is you worked in a General Electric that is growing and acquiring companies, and is integrating, and we got into NBC, Universal, GE Capital was its 5th largest commercial financial institution in the world. We're not a bank. Okay. And then we became regulated by the Fed. We were designated a systemically important financial institution. And that meant a lot to you. I know that because I was in Capital at the time, but I will imagine that for Cruttonville as a chief learning officer and at the time program leader for some of the leadership programs, that meant a lot. We were acquiring thousands and thousands of new banking SME. So we needed that expertise in-house, right? Subject matter experts in the regulated world, assimilating all of these people, integrating all of these people. And now then we divest ourselves, and then we go through another wave of spinning off 3 companies, and you are helping the new chief learning officers of those businesses get up to speed. We worked together.
As you were as well, right? You were as well, right? I mean, it was a whole, that whole idea was from a corporate perspective was how do we get those businesses up and running and ready, right? To be successful launches. And you played a key role into that as well. It was not just the leadership team, right? This was a combined team effort, multi-functions, right? That made that happen.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me that piece. And the thing that stays with me is in looking at this, right? Looking at how those things are managed. What are some of the leadership traits you think that play into, being there for the team? creating a level of autonomy. What are the things that are, enable this? And how do we continue to live this in any organizations? What are the things that you can take from your experiences there? High stress, high impact, lots of potential turf wars, but not really allowing that to become what dominated. So if you can just comment a little bit.
Yeah, that's a pretty big question, right, Tomas? Yeah, particularly when we look at all those lessons, all those decades, all those businesses that we've experienced and I've experienced over the years. Look, at the end of the day, I would say, self-awareness is like a big one for me. And it's not just about the team I'm leading, but it's also for myself. And what am I learning? I think as I closed out my time with GE, that was an incredible opportunity of where it's like, okay, how can we be our best as we close out this historic moment for the company? And part of that was, how do we start embedding just more self-awareness about the work that we have to do? So we were really clear on the priorities. We were really clear as it related to what work needed to be done in partnership with the businesses. But I just think that there was a way we kind of operationalized it, Tomas, that just really resonated. And that is, one, it's all about the people you're working with, making sure they have clarity as to what needs to get done. But I would say, two, is having enough humility to recognize that, one, you can't have it all figured out on your own, right? And you need your team around you being able to help keep you focused and grounded as to what the realities are. So as we were going through that 2 year of getting ready for the spinoffs, one of the best things we did as a team was we set up out of the cadence of the week, a day of reflection, not a day of reflection. It was just a half-hour segment, Tomas, where as a leadership team, we just said, okay, what really worked well this week? What didn't? And then how does that influence what we do next week? And part of that was for me to have enough, vulnerability and humility as it related to my admitting what didn't work so well and actions I took as a leader that week, which then opened up the door, I think, for a little bit more of people having permission to say, hey, you're right. And here's another way we might think about it, right? So when I think through all of those lessons, having enough humility, having enough focus, but also having enough context of where individuals are at, it plays in so much of that as it relates to you as a leader growing.
Yeah, interesting, because one of the things I observed in many of the courses, number one, I participated in a number of the training that we were at Cruttonville.
Yeah.
And if I were to put a ratio between the amount of time that we're focusing internally and how we think and what we think, I would say it's a good 60% of the time there in any one of the courses. It doesn't matter what it was.
Right.
Okay. MDC, ANC, whatever. It's about internal. And then the next thing is about a cohort, a set of peers that work with you for 5-6 days, global, different business lines, different function. It didn't matter. But then over the course of those experiences, there is a lot of authenticity. Like you become you, and the people can observe you being you, and they give you feedback. So from how does that environment, you created some of that, right? Collectively.
Yeah.
But how does that environment shape how you think about leadership?
Yeah.
How did it, I know you already covered this self-reflection and humility, but what else is it about it that makes it so important for leaders to spend time in their head, spend time with other people, and allowing the other people to give them feedback?
Yeah, look, it's kind of like setting that environment. It's all about the environment you set, the tone you set, and how consistent you are in that, right? If you recall, Tomas, we went from, a culture of where it was a pretty challenging time, right? But we also had less challenging times and more growth times, right? As part of that. And if you recall, when we were working on KPIs, right, it's like you're either green in target or you're red. There's nothing in between. And I just recall all the times I had been with a team of where the environment was such that you could just be really honest and open in solving the problem at hand.
Yeah.
And that you had a leader that was vested in you to help solve that problem.
Yeah.
So you think through like those circumstances of where, what team would you rather be on? Would you rather be on a team? And I've had, fortune when you're having, nearly 4 decades of being in different businesses, et cetera, you kind of watch, right, as an individual contributor on a team, you watch leaders around you and what resonates with you. And over time, what resonates for me is that I can set an environment of where the truth occurs, right? That we're there collectively to focus on the outcome, right, of what we're trying to solve. And then lastly, how can you set the right tone and questions where it's enabling that to come out for what you're trying to solve? So that takes some times. Sometimes it takes some failures, right?
Yeah.
As you mature as a leader to get to that point. But those are like the teams you can just tell. It's like, okay, we know what we're focused on. We know what the priorities are. We know where we're winning. We know where there's a challenge. How do we face into that together? And we're getting all the voices around that. And that's after many lessons learned, that's the tone I always tried to get to. And I would always appreciate, because I was always surrounded by just incredible team members and peers. Right.
That is very true.
And I remember
we were very fortunate.
We were really fortunate with the quality of the people in that, right? And I just recall that there would be sometimes I'd be on a call and we're working on something, and one of my team members might have shared some feedback from me that's like, the hair on my back of my neck might have got up, I might have gotten a little like put off.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, like, they're absolutely right.
Absolutely right.
Right. So how do I just encourage that? And then go back to them and just acknowledge them. Thank you for having, the ability or courage to, in that moment, to be able to speak that. Please do more of that. Right.
Interesting.
And that kind of just like, it's just one event like that turns into the next. And at the end of the day, if you build up enough trust in that organization, you're going to be able to go and tackle so many different things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do.
Interesting. I like a couple of things that you already, more than a couple that you already hit on that I find them already as a recurring in this conversation.
Sure.
Is one of them is humility. Like it's not just about I'm a nice guy and I'm humble. It's a skill set.
It is a skill set
that you develop. And then the other thing that you talked about is where the truth happens.
Yeah.
I never heard it said that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where to go with it, like, which is Jemba, but where the truth happens, that desire of really getting closer to it and not being afraid of it.
Right.
That's very powerful. Difficult to do, by the way. So
it's hard to do, right? Because there's a lot that gets in the way. Individuals have certain goals that they have. They may have certain measurements, right? Ego can get in the way at times, right?
Might have a little bit of that.
We all have that, right?
Yeah.
Where, we take pride in the work and the standards we have. So if you're interjecting something that is going to be testing that can be offensive for some at times, right? Because you take pride in the work you do. But at the end of the day, when you get the best ideas on the table, it's the idea that wins, right? And that's oftentimes, I found when there was like conflicting environments, it's like, let's focus on the outcome.
Yeah.
Focus on the outcome and let's try not to make this personal.
Yeah.
Right. And get the conversation to the outcome of what we're trying to solve for. And also understand that people have had conditioning over the years. And what I mean by that is some individuals may have been in an environment where they were either shut down or not rewarded for their work or not recognized, not even having the ability to weigh in, right? And I think as a leader, taking the time to kind of understand that and where people are, that matters to me. So taking that time
to where they're
dig a little bit, right, as it relates to where you're coming from. Right, trying to get to that understanding of that. Well, why do you hold that point of view? Because I've been in these conflicting situations where it's like, okay, this conference call, the team is not on your side. Share with me your point of view if you're going to be asking me to help defend this for you, because right now I just don't understand it. right?
Interesting.
So there are ways you can approach these things. And look, there are sometimes, Tomas, as you know, as a leader, you got to make the call, even if there may not be complete harmony in the decision that you have, and move forward. But I think as long as people have a chance to be heard, right, and respected in
Interesting.
that matters.
Interesting. And again, there's a lot in there, and I'm already thinking ahead. That there are things that we can explore further.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then maybe if we earn the trust,
Yeah.
maybe we'll have you again.
We'll see.
Yeah, and then the next thing is one of the things I also was curious about is the multiplying effect. That some of the things that the programs and the experiences you had for more than 20 years, I would say that almost the entire career is about enabling the ability for leaders to multiply, how they impact the team.
Right.
Where do the tools that we might have deployed and the values and the attitudes help that? And what do you see leaders exemplify when they become truly multipliers? What are the things that kind of unlock that from your experience? And again,
you're touching a little bit, you're touching on both some leadership capabilities. You're also touching on the harder part, which is the culture of the organization, right?
Yeah.
And you're right, the higher you're in the organization, like the bigger the shadow you can cast or the brighter the light you can cast, right?
Yeah.
And it can just take like one really bad experience that just folds the cards down, right? And just so, you could, you can have people head nodding, right? But then when it comes to the way people interact and lead, it can just be one bad experience that just cuts that trust bond that you have as it relates to that work getting done, right? So that's where I said earlier the consistency piece matters. But look, on the multiplier piece, it's all about setting great priorities, having good operational rigor in the systems that you have, being consistent in how you measure and handle. It's nuts and bolts, right? And the higher you are, you recognize that you have a much wider effect. But that can also be the challenge too, right, Tomas? Because the challenge we oftentimes see is that senior leaders believe an organization's here, but yet you get to the front line, there's a gap between the two. So we're always addressing, well, how can we make sure we have alignment so that gap is reduced? And ways leaders can do that, I mean, you touched upon it earlier, is going to Gemba, right? Hosting roundtables, using culture surveys, getting feedback from their direct team, being able to set up polling as it relates to when you're doing an all hands conference, being out in the field where it matters, right? And as a leader, you're constantly triangulating data to make course adjustments. And you're also asking your team for, back to that weekly cadence I was describing, what else could I be doing different? Or what else are we not seeing to get that? So that multiplier effect, absolutely. The higher you are, cast that bright light. It can drive that consistency, and it's all through your people and talent development processes as well. Or it can darken and dampen that as well, based upon those behaviors.
And it's just being vigilant, right?
Being consistent, right? Being clear, and these are where you're also, we often in the learning and talent circles, you're hearing more of these conversations around hard and soft skills, and people argue that the softer skills are actually the harder skills these days, right? So communications means everything, clear priorities, staying through, right, with those priorities. And there are times where you got to be really careful as it relates to, okay, if you point an organization, how quickly are you pivoting, or how consistent are you pivoting? So there's a little bit of art and science with that as well.
It is. And one other thought that comes to mind when you say soft skill, hard skills is with artificial intelligence nowadays, I am seeing that what we can call hardware and software, it's a little different now, because emotions and beliefs have the power of a hardware, not just software. They really shape up how this thing is going to process, like how a mind is going to process a situation.
That's right.
So it's interesting how we don't ignore beliefs. We don't ignore the mindset that a person has.
right?
Yeah.
And that's like changing the whole game on leadership development right now. And you're just seeing across organizations, it's a topic of, how do we think differently about leadership development, knowing that these tools are available to us, and how do we actually augment our leadership development with this technology? How do we raise people from a skilling perspective? And, the thought even occurred to me this morning. It was like, we're kind of like learning a new language and set of processes with these tech tools. But at the same time, in the learning and talent communities, we're trying to teach others at the same time. So think of it, I just think of like really simplistically, I'm learning how to ride a bike, but I'm trying to teach others how to ride a bike.
Ride a bike, and without training wheel.
Right?
Some of them will.
And it's going really fast
gets
because the learning gap is really strong these days, right?
And it grows exponentially. That's how I feel it. Like right now, when you look at AI and what we're learning 15 different things, and we're becoming more self-reliant, and that could be dangerous.
It can be dangerous, but it can also be really productive and very empowering, right? But we're still figuring that out. So as a leader, think of the implications for that as leaders now, Tomas, right? That is, there's like all this incredible knowledge base that I have that's just building every single day. So as a leader, I don't have to answer and have to have the answer, the knowledge for everything as much as I may have had before. So how do I, as a leader, just ask better questions, be more comfortable with not having all the answers, and being comfortable to test and learn in this environment to really prove out in very practical ways? How is this improving the culture and performance of the organization with these tool sets? And how does it stay compliant? And how do we stay well governed?
And that's a key,
right? It's extremely critical, right, for all of us in this.
Any one of us can make a big mistake on the compliance front in terms of using data, feeding it to something that it shouldn't be there.
Right.
It belongs to the company, and even the thought process that you have, it's still property of whoever you are doing this for.
That's right.
So you need to be, interesting.
Yeah, and I kept, you also just spurred one other thought too, Tomas. I just think through in the times that we've been working decade by decade, there's always technology advancements, right? And I asked myself, well, why is this different? And I think the difference is the rate of adoption and speed. The learning gap is just far greater than what, let's just say, e-commerce. Remember back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was managing a global supply chain team. We're starting to introduce order entry via customers doing it directly. So stakeholders, purchasers on the client side, they were concerned about, do they have a job? Customer service? How's this going to impact my role and job? And over time, we were able to kind of figure that out. But I felt like the cadence was more manageable. This one is just like, it's out of the gate.
In your face.
Right. And we're just trying to catch up. But, I would also acknowledge every year I'm just seeing those in the spaces I work in for leadership development and talent. We're just getting smarter about it as well. There's a lot of testing and learning and application, as well as, Tomas, like for you and I ourselves, rolling up our sleeves and using and applying and put it in context of our work as well.
Interesting. Yeah. When you look at and this is connecting it to this issue of learning as an organization, where do you see the same mindset working at scale, even if it's a small company, like small spaces, one company, one site? How many of these things have this similar impact? And if anything, does this new approach or new technology, does that, just make those smaller players have almost the same access to the same tools that now large corporations have?
Yeah.
How do you see that? And is that, the reason why I ask this question is in General Electric, you had billions of dollars of businesses, but you also had smaller teams, and you had startups, and you helped. We migrated learning from in person to online, and we did a lot of that. So we operated as an entrepreneur. So where do you see some of these key approaches keep mindsets playing out in smaller or startup environments?
Yeah, look, in those smaller startup environments, as you well know, right, they're wearing a lot of different hats, right?
Correct.
So they have a lot more responsibility. They see results generally much faster as it relates to their own actions. Their actions have direct consequences, good or bad, as it relates to, right? Versus as you get into a larger organization where some of those impacts can take a little bit longer time. But I think at the same level, those attributes of leadership are still applicable, whether it's small or large,
So it's
right?
still humility. It's
There's
still
still humility,
listening.
there's
It's
still
altogether.
operational rigor, there's still humility, there's still how are you setting yourself up? You know, we often talk about growth mindset, but how do you set a learning culture within your organization? And you know, I think about GE. What I always share with folks in those experiences that leadership was vested and invested.
Invested, yes.
And what I mean by the invested was the monetary piece, right? That you needed to do. And that was clearly the case and still is with the three businesses. But I think just as important, in fact, maybe even more important, was the vested side. And that is our leaders as faculty, our leaders as stakeholders, our leaders as, you follow me, right?
Project sponsor.
Right. They're sponsoring, you know, when you went off to a session, right, there was an expectation that you had a conversation with your leader afterwards as to what did you learn in that time that you were away, right? So that vested side and the invested side is really important. And look, that's going to clearly change as you have smaller, right, organizations so that are larger, but you can still have a really vested leadership team. You can still get a lot done with not as much investment just by being available, invested into what the organization is doing with their teams.
Interesting. Another area that is connected, because I've been vested and invested, is connected to one thing that I observed a lot, and is in our periodic updates with the global team.
Yeah.
I remember that there were accomplishments that the team made that sometimes I will hear about something we did. I thought it was a small thing. You celebrated every one of those with just equal fanfare.
Yeah, good observation.
And I remember that, you know, I got used to it. Like I initially, it was like, oh, but I didn't feel like some of this thing. For me, like this is more, sometimes we have an interesting sense of humility that is not placed right.
Sure.
And so I didn't see that this is a bigger deal. But yet, as a leader, you made a point to celebrate those wins, those victories. Then it clicked on me that, wow, this is equally important, right? Because that's how we kind of bring together. It's like a spider web.
Right.
It's every strand counts. And then, so what can you tell me about how did that come about for you? And how do you keep it going, especially as chief learning officer for the entire corporation, right? So how do you keep those shining the lights and those things that, you know, at your level perhaps don't look like that big, but they seem to matter.
They do matter. Look, it's you know, it's all in what may seemingly be small is in fact really big to that individual. Right?
And I heard that before.
Right.
Early in my career, I heard that exactly before. There's a little pebble that you take out of someone's shoes. It looks small, but the guy couldn't walk.
Yeah, it depends upon what your baseline is, right? And so for some individuals that have been working really hard and it may seem small, you know, a win's a win.
It's a win.
Right. So I'm going to take that win. Now, look, you always got to be careful that you are highlighting the things that
they're connected.
right?
They're connected. They're not isolated. They're connected.
Because if all you're hearing is the great, you know, the good stories, they're not, you know, facing into, well, what are the things you also need to improve upon, right? Because you're like never done. But that said, I think we did a pretty good job of like moderating that. But at the end of the day, we don't always understand as leaders what it took for that seemingly small accomplishment But in time when you actually spend some time understanding the work that they had to do and maybe the stakeholder, whatever, what their situation was, it's actually pretty big, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you also got to be careful, I think, Tomas, is a great point to raise, is like watching who are you constantly celebrating the same group? Are you really giving equal voice
Equal
across the
voice,
organization?
yeah.
I remember going through one of the leadership sessions myself as we were going through lean strategy. And one of the master coaches said, when you're on a group call globally, who are you listening to? And that really resonated for me because it's like, okay, am I always going to the same people, or am I giving enough voice or an environment where people can share their perspective, right? So that always resonated for me. And I think good leaders are now also being requested and being required to be really good facilitators. So I think part of that facilitation, if you and you're good facilitation, Tomas, right?
Yeah.
And that is, are you making sure you're getting all the voices out on the table for for that work at
Yeah,
hand,
through a very good process
right?
of truly listening, acknowledging, recording it,
Right?
and then acting on it, even if it's, yeah, we're gonna pass on this and gonna move and choose, but at least to give an opportunity to that voice to truly be heard. And,
Right.
yeah, and yeah, so I think the one thing you touch on a lot of this thing
Mhm.
already, but building a culture of improvement, a
Yeah.
continuous
Yeah.
improvement, which is one of the things that we focus on. So if you were to put it all together,
Hmm.
if you were if you were to start, you have your own business, you might be facing some situation.
Hmm.
Um, if you were to start, and I want to start a deliberate journey of process improvement,
Hmm.
where would you go first? Like
Yeah.
for and this is the reason why I ask this
Hmm.
question is like many of us are going to be working with potential clients and other
Right.
people,
Sure.
and it's easy to go and show up and the value stream mapping and
Oh,
work
absolutely. Right.
and have all the tools and yeah, but what are the things that open the door to something that is meaningful to them, and it can make an impact today, whatever they might be today.
Hmm.
It, just unlocking that process improvement, and then what are the earlier behaviors or signs that will create momentum for
Yeah.
uh,
So,
mm,
you and I have been in enough scenarios where we're into a new role, new
mhm,
organization,
mm,
new set of challenges, right? And I usually like using that first 60 to 90 days of just doing some really intense learning and
mhm,
listening.
mm,
So I think baseline is just so important. Understanding the reasons as to the why as it relates to the measures and how we operate today, right? Trying to understand that because you could look at one set of numbers and just like make an assumption that, well, there's a
yeah,
spot, right? But do we actually know the story of how we got there and the why behind that?
mm,
So I usually use that first 60 to 90 days of really just doing intense listening, baselining of the current data, and then just asking really, this is an opportunity where you can just ask some really good open-ended questions
mm,
for understanding. And then once you kind of take that and based upon your own experiences, then start looking at, okay, here are the things that I think that we just need to continue to just invest and spend time and do work on. Here are areas that, collectively through that listening,
mhm,
we need to start working on to improve. Right.
yeah,
And that for me is like a really important part. And you're doing these cycle checks throughout that time period. And look, I also
so so
recognize, yeah,
so no going into assumptions
you
or
can no,
because
right? It's right. I mean, look, unless there's a department or an area you knew really well, right, and you were taking on that, fine, that's fine and good, right? But I'm saying that in context of like in a new environment, people want to be heard. Particularly in those first 60 or 90 days, people are questioning, okay, how's this good leader going to impact my work, right? Do I still have a place on the team, right? Do they understand how we got here and what this this is, you know, the work that we've done?
Hmm.
Do they value the
Is it?
work that I've done and my team has done? Those are things people want to be able to express. It's almost like in a new manager assimilation. Oftentimes,
That's exactly
right?
what I was thinking
It's
about.
very much like that, right? In the sense of, do you really understand us? Do you, leader, understand the challenges you're going into, right? And then I think it's, you know, based upon your experiences and the op cadence you put in. But also I just think you know, we talk quite a bit, right, at
Mm.
GE around transparency.
Mhm.
Letting people know where are you at in the process of this so you can bring them along with that. That's just really important. And in today's environment, Tomas, as you know, um, you're just constantly hearing words of transformation, change,
Mhm.
speed, and it is
It's
fatiguing
fatiguing. Yeah.
for
So yeah.
people, right? So how you show up as a leader is just so important as to how do you kind of put in check, you know, your emotions through that time period that you're leading. And there are going to be some times where you just need to make sure that even though you may have had a bad day, your team doesn't see it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's an interesting. You touched on one that I can revisit,
Yeah.
but in the right light. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm revisiting. There was a situation in which I was clearly frustrated about what was going on.
Sure. Yeah.
In a meeting where we were just celebrating somebody, for some reason, to just say some things. I regret it.
Sure.
And I
We all do.
went,
Yeah.
so you, at the time, my boss was somebody else, but I
Yeah.
went out, apologized to the people who were not my boss. I went and apologized and
Yeah.
say something. But you actually, when I told you and then explained to you, hey, look, I'm very sorry that you had to listen to this. You actually say, no, I am very glad that you told me this and you express yourself. You know, it's important that you say those things. Like,
Yeah.
don't bottle that up. And to me, that had a big impact because it wasn't just in the moment. I had to reprocess that feedback
Mm.
a number of times. How can a person be in a place where you can be human?
Right.
And I can let you have a meltdown. I don't want you to have a
Yeah.
meltdown, but I can watch it and know the character
Right.
and not let that dictate
Yeah.
what I see. Again, it's a moment of candor.
Well, thank you for that. I
Yeah, yeah,
appreciate that. Look, there's a
yeah, yeah,
self-regulation we all
yeah,
have. There's a
yeah,
journey we all go on, right,
yeah,
Tomas?
exactly.
And you know, week by week, there'd be something that's like, geez, I could have done something a little bit better, or could I have expressed things better? You know, at one period of time, because you and I experienced it, you know, centralization, decentralization. This one of the things I share with groups is that be really careful, right? Because when you're like the center of power, how you treat those that have been centralized it's really important because at some point you're going to be decentralized. And I think about with the businesses, right? When we centralized everything, how we gave those businesses voice. And some days we did a better job than others. Let's be honest about that, right? But I think over time, we got better and better each year of having the businesses give voice. So when we had to break that up, I think it just accelerated things because we had such great trust in that.
Exactly. Yeah, it felt very organic in a way.
Right.
Nothing. We knew the players. We will talk. We will help. Our input was welcome.
Absolutely.
Each CLO of the businesses, they were talking to me day in and day out.
That's right. And it's your obligation to share, right? To get them successful, right? As part of that process.
And there was the one thing that it's interesting in the culture is that layers are not evident in how people treat one another. They're evident in other places, but how people treat one another. But that helped in that acceleration.
Absolutely.
And that acceleration is,
you know,
yeah.
And you got me thinking too a little bit too. I remember as we go through some of those challenging times. I mean, we went through we all have collectively, right?
Yeah.
I just remember that I always have the group setting, and then I have the one-on-one setting. And I was always cognizant that the speed of change that was acceptable to me is not necessarily always acceptable to the individual that's part of my team.
Understand.
So I need to be really careful in understanding where's that temperature check. Because with some, I could really, we could accelerate, and others, it's like I had to just be more cadenced
Okay.
in that as well. So I think being aware of that.
And how much you introduce when, like how much?
Right, because, you could be like really good intent of, I'm going to be super transparent, but that could frighten some folks. Follow me on that,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And you have others where it's like they want more information, but they can also be in a sense of having the full understanding where you can share that information. So these things really tend to be, you have your group message, but then you're also finessing the conversation at the one-to-one level based upon where that individual's change rate is at.
Good. Great. The last topic,
Yeah.
I guess, is on autonomy.
Mhm.
So, I now with AI and all the experiences that we went through with integration,
Right.
separation,
Right.
integration,
Yeah.
changing the course. Like we
Right.
were lock and loaded. We couldn't
Absolutely.
hire in capital. We were not hiring risk professionals fast enough
Mhm.
or quantitative people
Yeah.
fast enough. So we actually that was a risk we were managing, just getting those people on board, and we couldn't get them fast enough. And then we had to pivot.
Yeah.
Now we needed to separate. So that's that quick change. The thing that helped me navigate through all of this is really being grounded in the sense of what exactly it's important for the companies. Like
Mhm.
what are the core skills that I can bring to the table? Like
Yeah.
so project management or stakeholder management or so a skill base that allowed me to operate with a sense
Mhm.
of autonomy.
Mhm.
And those things are not soft skills. They tend to be more.
Mhm.
So in your experience, the balance of building skilled
Mm.
individuals
Mm.
that can then have a sense of autonomy
Yeah. Yeah.
and not only keep it to themselves, but make sure that it goes deep in the organization. So what are the things and I
Yeah.
think we touch on a lot of that,
Sure.
but I want to hear from you how you think about it.
Sure. So could you give me a few, first, and just on a very personal level, I was so fortunate with peers and leaders and what the company invested in me over the years. I had a decade of being customer facing.
Mm-hmm.
I had, a decade of being back end support where I could make those things match. And then the rest was the leadership development side.
Mm-hmm.
So those lived experiences are really important, right? That we
Mm-hmm.
have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it really helped me in just being able to have some credibility
Mm-hmm.
and being able to do the work I've been able to do. So that's this one. Today, we're in a world of where you're hearing a lot on the topic of reskilling for the way forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as we look at some of these technologies, let's say we have individual 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they have like 10 core skills. AI may consume a few of those. Well, then does that collapse these 5 roles to 4, right? It's likely going to happen, as
It's
if,
gotta
right, that
happen.
things happen, right? So I often think about this dynamic of the depth you have and the breadth you have. And I often would spend time with my team in these development conversations and what we would work on for the years. How do we expand that breadth and the depth in the work that we're doing? I think it's becoming even more important now, even with the breadth side. As I'm terming it, this is me, like this collapsing skills that we're in as these technologies come along. So I think it's very role specific,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's very business specific in the work that you're doing. But if I were to just take an example of like a team member of mine where, we have areas of design, we have areas of faculty delivery, we have the operational skills. There's probably 1 or 2 other ones. How do I expand the experiences of my team so there's opportunities come about inside the company and outside of the company
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that they're contemporary and they're relevant to what that work is? So that's what I look at as that breadth and depth
So that creates
conversation.
that autonomy is a cross-training matrix, if you will.
Yeah, and then look, on the topic of autonomy, then you're getting into like decision making, right? And then for you as a leader to decide, as you're setting your op cadence, right? And you got your dashboards and you're having your one-on-ones and you got your team meetings, deciding how deep do you have to go? And then how far, where are you spending your time? And you're steeped in lean. One of the best exercises I did as part of my lean journey was, where am I spending my time from a leader standard work perspective? I remember just like, here's my priorities. Let me look at every meeting I'm in and my current cadence. And there are ones that I'm just being into because I think I should be in, or this team had that. Well, the team's got that one.
Wow.
I'm out. Right? Right. And then empowering your team. And I think now you're also getting this nuance of how are you developing your team so that you give them an opportunity to grow. Sometimes failed as part of that growth piece, right? But if you're going to keep right, but if you're going to keep intervening, what type of environment are you creating there, right? So look at where you're spending your time, I would say, is really important. Determine where you have to go deep and where you don't go deep. And then are you building a team that, ultimately as leaders, you're really looking to how are you growing them and how do you take yourself out of a role, right? That's like the ultimate success.
That's interesting. That the mindset usually that I approach any role I took. How do I eliminate this?
It's a great way to have
I love the job,
right?
But how do I make it something else? Like, how do I not make it my daily thing?
Spot on.
To do the same thing that I did yesterday, like.
I really like that, Tomas, because the job descriptions we take are so different after a year.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not often, you never say never, but I've never seen a leader where they're looking at how they grow their teams and themselves into new things where they were putting themselves at risk.
Yeah.
They tended to be very much applauded within the organization.
Yeah. Interesting. So now I think I might be close to overstaying my welcome, but
you're fine.
But thank you. So, the one I want to know from you, what are the 2 or 3 things I might not know about you, or other in the audience may not know about you in terms of context? Where are you heading? Where are you going? iVentiv.
I've got
some of those things that you do.
Some cool things going
on. Where do you see that? Especially you came back from Cologne, right?
Yeah, I was just out in Cologne last week. It was great. So, look, I closed up my chapters with GE in just an incredible way, and I'm just so fortunate in the way that closed out. So I decided, how do I use my time now? Because now I have I have the ability to do some things where I have some choices as part of that, right? So first thing I did was I took coaching certification at Brown University, which was amazing. So I did that. The group iVentiv, which brings together learning and talent leads with sponsors and suppliers. And we have 2 days of community talking about, where is learning going? How are we creating new leaders? How are we facing into AI? That organization is just top notch to set a great tone in conversation. So I chair events there. I work with a couple divisions with LHH. One is called ICEO. And I act as a senior advisor, helping C-suite individuals that are going through a career transition or mentoring over a 6, 9, or 12-month period. High quality, incredible base of knowledge. And I think the culture they set is just impeccable. So I just really admire the work they do and the people we work with. Another part of LHH, because we did work with them, is Ezra.
Yeah.
So I sit on the advisory board with Ezra, right? And they had a great impact at GE, and they continue to do. And I sit on their advisory board. So what a great way to be able to help something that you believe in, a company that you believe in, doing incredible work across the globe. Where I'm able to share input on products and markets and host dinners and conversations and be on panels. It's just a wonderful organization. So I spend time there. And then I also spent some time at my business schools. So I sit on the dean's advisory boards for Siena University, my undergrad, as well as Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And to be able to serve those deans, the faculty, and students is a way to give back. So I'm having a blast with that. Still playing in the band, Tomas. So I'm still having fun with that. And continuing to just, it's like you do, right? You're just like never done. And also just taking time for myself and well-being and travel and time with my wife and family. So I've just been set up in such a great way. And I'm just so lucky to have you and so many other GE alum that I stay in touch with that are just so supportive, coming out of that. So
Awesome.
it's been really fun and exciting work. And, we can talk in a year and see where I'm at, but I appreciate your asking. And also just the time today, Tomas, because, I shared with the group last week, we were so lucky that we had somebody like you and others that served in that role that was focused on learning.
Yep.
From a sourcing, operational excellence perspective. And you were much broader than like this term of sourcing, right?
Yep. Yep.
You really got to know the organization, you got to know the players, but more importantly, what we were trying to achieve as part of that.
And getting embedded into
and being part of that, right? And there's few organizations in this world where you have sourcing organizations
being part of the solution.
Being part of that, right? And bringing them in. So when I share with other learning and talent leads that we had individuals like you as part of our team, they only could wish for that because it seems to be at such a battle at times, or it can be if you don't set up the right, sense of how that work gets done. But it's just been a blast, and I know you're doing exciting things, so I'm so glad to be a part of this today.
Well, thank you, number one, for being here. Number two, for being the catalyst of getting things going with episode one was Tom Mathis, and there was an idea.
Huge admiration for Tom.
Came out of a good conversation. He set it up pretty well. This today, we got quite a bit of material that I think is going to send me on a journey for new questions. So if I need help with any of my future guests, I might lean on you to help me be credible with them. And then, no, but thank you. Thank you so much. I am more than grateful. I am, I blessed by having your collaboration here and the content today. I can't wait to listen to it a second time with taking more careful.
Hey, listen, no, look, it's a conversation, right? And all the best to you, Tomas, and just giving the format for this conversation and helping other companies here on their journey as well. So thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Flow at the Source, produced by TBR ChangeWorks and hosted by Tomas Reyes. These conversations aim to support the thinking that turns improvement ideas into sustainable action. We thank our guests for sharing their perspectives. Those views are their own.